When did leaving become the best revenge? Story time. Why don't you just disappear? My stepdaughter snapped during an argument. Her mother didn't defend me. Instead, she added, maybe we'd all be better off without you. I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I just packed my bags. This morning, my phone exploded with 13 missed calls. Something felt off. When I walked into our living room that Sunday morning, the house was eerily quiet. But that wasn't what struck me. I scanned the room, sensing something wrong. Then it hit me. All of our family photos looked different. I stepped closer to the large frame above the fireplace. The one from our Yellowstone trip last summer. The picture was still there, but I wasn't. Every single photo of me had been carefully removed. There were now empty spaces in years worth of family moments. I stood there, my coffee growing cold in my hand. Then I heard Stella's bedroom door close upstairs. She hesitated at the stop of the stairs. She knew I was up. Then, after a brief pause, she walked down, phone in hand, deliberately avoiding eye contact as she headed for the kitchen. Morning, I said, keeping my tone neutral. The silence that followed was heavy with intent. 3 years. That's how long I had been in Stella's life. 3 years of building trust, of movie nights, helping with homework, being there without pushing too hard. Now, at 16, she had started pulling away. I expected normal teenage rebellion, but this was something else. It started last week. She was struggling with chemistry, so I offered to help with her project. Her response hit like a slap. Stop pretending you care about my grades. You're not my real dad. Now, I'd heard variations of that before, but something in her tone was different, sharper, deliberate. Her mother Delilah was in the kitchen and must have heard, but she said nothing. That silence felt like choosing sides. The tension only grew from there. Pointed looks over dishes left in the sink, doors closing just a little too hard, conversations that stopped when I walked into the room. Delilah became distant too, deflecting every time I tried to bring it up. She's just being a teenager, Thomas. Don't make this about you. Then last night, everything exploded. We were having dinner, and Stella was texting against our usual kitchen rules. I gently reminded her, no phones at the table, remember? She threw her phone down. God, why are you always policing me? Why can't you just leave me alone one time? Stella, I'm just trying to what? Play dad? I already have one. She stood up, chair scraping against the floor. Why don't you just disappear? Nobody asked you to try so hard. Pathetic. I turned to Delilah, expecting something, support, meditation, anything. Instead, she put her fork down and calmly, maybe we'd all be better off if you did. Her words hung in the air like smoke. 3 years of memories flashed through my mind. The day Stella first laughed at one of my dad jokes. The night she called me in tears after her first breakup. The proud smile Delilah gave me when Stella asked me, not her mom, to help pick out her prom dress. I stood up slowly, dinner half eaten. Okay, I said simply. Okay, what? Stella challenged, but I saw a flicker of something in her eyes. Uncertain, maybe even regret. If that's how you both feel, okay. I walked upstairs, pulled out my old duffel bag. Downstairs, I could hear them whispering, but nobody came up as I passed, and that silence said everything. When I came back down, Stella was gone, and Delilah stood in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed. So you're just leaving? That's your solution? You said you'd be better off, I replied, grabbing my keys. I'm just respecting that. She hesitated. That's not, I didn't mean, but pride, anger, something else stopped her from finishing. I picked up my bag. I'll be at Ryan. I'll figure something more permanent out soon. Then I paused at the door. When Stella said those things before, it hurt. But hearing you agree, that broke something, Del. I drove to Ryan's in silence. He took one look at me and set up his guest room without questions. That's the kind of friend he is. I turned off my phone, took a sleeping pill from my emergency stack. Then this morning, sunlight streamed through unfamiliar curtains. And when I finally turned my phone back on, it exploded with notifications. 13 missed calls, 8 from Delilah, 3 from Stella, 2 from Quinn, my sister, 27 unread messages, and 4 voicemails. I haven't listened to them yet. I'm sitting here in Ryan's guest room, staring at the morning traffic below, thinking about how all of those empty spaces in our family photos, they were always there, and I just didn't want to see them. My phone buzzes again. It's Stella. After everything that happened, I find myself staring at her name, wondering what could be so urgent now, but I'm not ready. Not yet. Sometimes the hardest thing isn't walking away. It's knowing whether you should walk back. Update 1. First, thank you all for the overwhelming support. I didn't expect this many responses. And to answer the most common questions, yes, I've read the messages. No, I have not replied. And yes, I'm still at Ryan's. More updates soon. This morning started like the other. Me pretending to focus on work while really staring at my phone, debating whether or not to break the silence. Then Ryan dropped a bomb over breakfast. Miles is back in town, he said, sliding his phone across the table. There, on Facebook, was a photo of Stella's biological father, tagged at a local restaurant from 2 weeks ago. The same Miles who hasn't paid child support in, mind you, 3 years. The same Miles who missed Stella's last 4 birthdays. And suddenly, everything made sense. I scrolled through my texts again. Delilah's messages had evolved from angry, real mature Thomas, running away instead of talking, to concerned, please, just let us know you're okay, to something more complicated. Her latest read, there's something you need to know. It's Stella. Please call. Around lunch, Quinn showed up, coffee in one hand and that no-nonsense look in her eyes. You look like hell, she announced, dropping on the Ryan's couch. Thanks. Always good to see you too, sis. She didn't smile. I ran into Stella at the mall yesterday. That got my attention. How is she? Meeting Miles for coffee. I stiffened. She didn't see me, Quinn added, watching my reaction carefully. She looked hopeful. You know that look she gets, like when she's trying not to get too excited about something? I knew exactly what she meant. It was the same look Stella had when she got accepted into that summer program last year. Like she was afraid to believe something good was finally happening. Did you know he's been messaging her for months? Quinn continued, promising to make things right this time. My stomach twisted. I checked Stella's Instagram, something I rarely did. Her latest post, a picture of her with Miles, captioned real family time. The comments were flooded with heart emojis from her friends. None of them knew the history. Ryan, who had been quietly listening, finally spoke up. Remember what happened last time he showed up when Stella was 13? I remembered. Miles swept in with grand promises, and it lasted 2 weeks, then disappeared again. Stella didn't leave her room for days. Delilah and I spent months rebuilding her trust, convincing her that she was enough, that she deserved better. And then, as if on cue, my phone lit up with a new text from Delilah. He's asking her to move in with him. She's actually considering it. Please, Thomas, I know you're angry with me, but she needs you. I started typing, deleted it, typed again, deleted it again. What could I even say? Sorry, you told me to disappear, but now you need me to reappear? The whole situation just felt like a cruel joke. Then, another notification. Stella's new Instagram story. A picture of college brochures spread across her bed, captioned, "Big changes coming. Sometimes you have to choose your real path." Those were Miles' exact words from 3 years ago, right before he moved across the country for his real path and stopped answering Stella's call. Quinn must have seen something in my face. "What are you thinking?" she asked. I took a deep breath. "I'm thinking about the day I married Delilah," I said slowly. "Remember what Stella said in her speech? How sometimes family finds you when you're not looking for it? And now she's posting about her real family, her real path, while Miles plays farther of the year. He's got her convinced." I stopped as my phone started ringing. Unknown number. "Thomas, this is Miss Anderson from Riverside High, Stella's guidance counselor. I know this is unusual, but I need to speak with you about some concerning changes in Stella's academic plans and recent behavior. Would you be able to come in tomorrow morning?" I agreed, my mind racing. Stella had been maintaining straight A's since freshman year, determined to get into a good school, but something had changed. What could have changed? After I hung up, Quinn and Ryan were both watching me expectantly. "So?" Quinn prompted. I exhaled, tripping my phone. "I think it's time to stop being silent." I finally opened the voicemail from Stella. Her voice was small, nothing like her usual confident tone. "I know you probably hate me now, and I get it. I need to tell you something about why I said those things about Miles. Just call me back, please." There was something in her voice that reminded me of the 13-year-old girl who used to check the mailbox every day, hoping for a letter that never came. I stared at my screen. I had a choice. "I'm meeting with the guidance counselor tomorrow at 9 a.m. sharp, I said finally. "After that, I think it's time for some honest conversations. Because the thing about disappearing is sometimes it lets you see things more clearly from a distance." The school's number was still on my screen. Right next to it, a text message from Miles in our old family group chat, the one I was still a part of. "Great news! Big announcement at dinner tomorrow night." I had a feeling I knew exactly what that announcement would be, and I wasn't about to let history repeat itself. Update 2. I've spent the last hour trying to figure out how to write this update. The meeting with Miss Anderson revealed things I never expected. And what happened after all that? Well, let me start from the beginning. I arrived at Riverside High early, watching students rush to first period. A few of Stella's classmates recognized me, their quick glances and whispers making it clear. Rumors were already circulating about my absence. Miss Anderson didn't waste time once I sat down. "Stella submitted paperwork to withdraw from her AP classes yesterday," she said, sliding a form across her desk. "She's also dropping French club and student council." I frowned. "Why?" "She says she's transferring schools next semester." My chest tightened. These were the programs Stella had fought to get into, the extracurriculars she needed for her college applications. "There's more," Miss Anderson continued. "Last week, she asked me to send her transcript to 3 different schools." She hesitated. "All in California." I sat up straighter. The same city where Miles recently bought property. That's when the pieces clicked into place. I pulled out my phone, showing her Miles' text. "Let me guess," I said. "He's opening a new business out there?" Miss Anderson nodded. She mentioned something about a startup. Said her father needs family investors to get it off the ground. That sick feeling returned. The same one I got 3 years ago when Miles convinced Delilah to loan him money for a sure-thing business venture. Money we never saw again. I left the school and drove straight to our house. Delilah's car was in the driveway. Through the window, I saw her pacing in the kitchen, phone to her ear. She spotted me through the glass and rushed to open the door before I could even knock. "He asked her for money," she said immediately. "Her college fund." I froze. "He's been filling her head with promises about this tech startup, saying if she invests now, she'll make enough to pay for any college she wants." I ran a hand down my face. "Well, where is she?" "Coffee with Miles." Again, Delilah's voice cracked. I tried telling her it's a scam, but she accused me of being jealous that he's finally stepping up. She said, at least he believes in her dreams. That hit like a gut punch. I sat down at the kitchen counter, the same spot where everything fell apart a week ago. "Why didn't you tell me he was back?" Delilah hesitated. "I thought I could handle it myself. I thought if I kept them apart." She shook her head. "Then you and Stella had that fight, and she said those things, and I panicked." Her voice dropped. I sided with her because I was afraid if I didn't, she'd choose him completely. I stared at her, but before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A new message from Stella, and this time, I wasn't sure if I was ready to read it. The front door swung open. Stella walked in and froze when she saw me. Her appearance was different. Makeup carefully applied, the expensive jacket Miles must have bought her, but her eyes were red. "What are you doing here?" she asked, but the usual edge in her voice was missing. "Dropping your AP classes? Really?" I kept my tone gentle. She looked away. "Plans changed," she mumbled. "What happened to Stanford?" She hesitated. Dad says, Miles says, I correctly, quietly. Something flickered across her face. He has connections out there. The startup is guaranteed that, like the classic car dealership was guaranteed, or the food truck franchise. I pulled out my laptop and opened the documents I'd spend the morning gathering. I did some digging. Want to see Miles' current business registration status, or his credit report, or maybe the 3 pending lawsuits from his last guaranteed investment opportunity? Stella's hands trembled as she took the laptop. Click. Each document cracked her carefully built facade a little more. Click. When she reached the lawsuit from her previous stepdaughter's grandmother trying to recover the college funds he borrowed, the first tear fell. He said, she swallowed hard. He said he's changed, that he wants to make up for lost time, that we could be a real family if she stopped, looking up at me suddenly. The photo album. He said I had to prove I was choosing him, that you were the reason he stayed away, because you took his place. Delilah moved toward her, voice soft. Oh, sweetie. But Stella stepped back. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I knew, she swallowed. Deep down, I think I knew, but I wanted so badly to believe him. Her phone buzzed. Another text from Miles. She stared at it for a long moment, then turned it off completely. I have to go, she said abruptly, heading for the stairs. I need to think. We let her go. Sometimes space is the kindest thing you can offer. Hours passed. Delilah and I talked, and we really talked for the first time in weeks, about fears, about mistakes, about Stella, about Miles, and of course, about us. Around midnight, I was getting ready to leave for Ryan's when my phone lit up. A text from Stella. I messed up. Everything's messed up, but can we talk? I read on. Really talk. Not about Miles, not about money, nothing like that. Then, remember when we used to get ice cream after my dance classes, and you'd let me rant about school drama? Could we maybe do that? Pause. I know I don't deserve it, but my heart clenched as I read the last line. I'm parked outside our usual ice cream place. The owner knows us. He's keeping it open late just for us. I grabbed my jacket. Through the windshield, I saw her car already there. She was just sitting there, probably working up the courage to come inside, just like I was, because sometimes the hardest conversations start with the smallest steps, or in this case, with mint chocolate chip ice cream at midnight. Final update. That night at the ice cream shop changed everything. Stella talked for hours about Miles' manipulation, about her fears, and of course, her guilt. But it was one small thing she mentioned in passing that caught my attention. Miles had always been asking her to convince her friend's parents to invest in his startup too. Something clicked. I remembered the lawsuits I found, the pattern targeting families through their children, and the rage I'd been suppressing finally had a purpose. You know, I said carefully, what's he doing isn't just morally wrong, it's downright illegal. Stella's head snapped up. Well, what do you mean? I pulled out my phone, explained securities fraud, how running unauthorized investment schemes was indeed a crime, and her eyes just widened open. She pulled out her phone, scrolling through her group chats where Miles had been directly soliciting investments from minors. That night, after I dropped Stella home, I made some calls. Quinn had a friend at the SEC. Ryan knew someone in the DA's office. By morning, I had a plan, and Miles didn't see it coming. He was too focused on his big announcement dinner, the one where he planned to convince Stella to sign over her college fund. He even invited some of her friends' parents, more potential targets. The dinner was at an expensive restaurant. Miles was in his element, talking about Silicon Valley connections, promising guaranteed returns. I waited until the appetizers arrived. Then I stood up, cleared my throat. Before we continue, I said, my voice calm, there's something you all need to hear. For those who'd like to join us, on cue, 2 federal agents and a state investigator stepped into the room. Miles' face shifted from confident to confused to completely terrified in a matter of seconds. Turned out he wasn't just running one scam. The investigators had uncovered 7 different fraudulent schemes across 3 states. Every time he reconnected with Stella over the years, he was lining up new victims. The classic car dealership that drained Delilah's savings, part of a larger fraud network. The food truck franchise that never took off, same pattern. But here's the beautiful part. He'd gotten sloppy. Every scam, every promise, every lie was in fact documented. He had texted Stella everything, assuming she'd never turn on him. He was wrong. When she forwarded those messages to investigators, his fate was sealed. The parents at the dinner, they were wearing wires. Every shady investment pitch, every manipulation, every illegal transaction was recorded. Miles proceeded to panic like no tomorrow. He actually knocked over a waiter and sprinted for the exit. He made it 3 steps. Security tackled him before he could reach the door, and as they hauled him away, he turned to Stella, wearing that same manipulative puppy dog expression she'd fallen for too many times. Sweetie, this is all a misunderstanding. Tell them I'm your father. Stella stood up, shoulders straight. She reached for my hand. My father is right here, she said, and he just watched you get exactly what you deserve. The aftermath was intense. News coverage, victim statements, more families coming forward. Investigators found over $2.3 million in stolen funds. Miles, he's looking at 15 to 20 years. His quote-unquote tech startup, a fake website with stolen photos from a real company's office. But the real victory wasn't watching him get arrested. It was in the small moments afterwards. Stella took every photo of Miles, packed them in a box, and donated them to the prosecution. Evidence, she called it, with a hint of her old smile. She re-enrolled in her AP classes. The school understood, given the circumstances. The parents Miles tried to scam, instead of being angry, they formed a support group to help other families avoid similar cons. Something good from something awful. Last night, Stella asked me to help her with her college essays. I have a pretty unique story now, she said, smirking. How many people can write about taking down their biological father's fraud empire? Delilah and I are in counseling. There's trust to rebuild, wounds to heal. But last week, I watched her put my photos back into the family albums, carefully straightening each one. That said more than words could ever. And this morning, Stella came came downstairs early. She had an envelope in her hands. I found this in my room, she said, sliding it across the table. Miles asked me to mail it last week. Investment paperwork for his startup. She hesitated. I thought maybe you'd want to add it to the evidence file. I glanced at the envelope, then at her. Want to deliver it to the investigators together? She grinned, that real, unguarded smile I'd missed. Can we get ice cream after? Some people might say the revenge was too harsh, that family is family no matter what. But real family doesn't steal your future. Real family protects it, even if it means protecting you from other family. Miles' sentencing is next month. Stella's planning to read a victim impact statement. She'd been working on it for weeks, revising every word carefully. Yesterday, she asked me to look it over. It needs a strong ending, she said. Something that shows I'm not just his victim anymore. I think she's already found that ending. It's in the way she holds her head up now, the way she helps other kids spot similar scams, the college brochures back on her desk, her real path, not the one Miles tried to sell her. Because sometimes moving forward isn't just about breaking free. It's about making sure the past can't hurt anyone else. And sometimes the best revenge isn't just watching someone face consequences, it's thriving despite them. Tonight, we're having a family dinner. Just the three of us. Stella's making her famous pasta sauce, the one she learned from watching cooking videos with me during lockdown. Normal, boring, but just all wonderful. The kind of life Miles will have plenty of time to think about from his cell. Thank you, and subscribe to Reddit Family Karma.